Welcome to the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center's Global Change Research Wetland, also known as GCReW. GCReW is home to the world's longest-running climate change experiment. Now, let's meet some of the GCReW crew, the scientists dedicated to unraveling its mysteries.
Well, I actually started working at Circa in 1996. I got my first grant to come out here where Bert Drake was running a long-term experiment. At that time, it had been running about 10 years. Well, over that time, the original experiment that Bert started has grown older and richer and ever more interesting. It's now, I think, in year 38 maybe that we're headed into.
So I was hired as a postdoc to work on one particular project, which is SmartX, the experiment we're standing in right now. And so that's what I did for the first few years, was just run this particular project. But now I run an entire lab, which means supervising multiple projects and multiple employees working on those projects.
I first came to CERC here in 2015. Pat McGonigal and I wrote the grant for SmartX to build the above ground, below ground warming experiment. And so I had been working in terrestrial forests to do these warming experiments. And Pat and I had always wanted to build this, so we wrote this grant together, and we got it funded. So I came here to do that.
So I'm an environmental engineer. I'm the site manager for the Global Change Research Wetlands. So that means that I'm responsible for basically everything that goes on here.
Officially, I started working here while I was in college. At that time, I was mainly just processing samples in our lab, also helping with some of the infrastructure out here, so building boardwalks and things like that. We have to build and maintain these experiments, and that takes a lot of work. I love to build things, I love to engineer things, I like to be visionary about how I put together something.
The first experiment at GCReW was established back in 1987 by a plant physiologist named Bert Drake. The goal was to create a long-term experiment, the first of its kind, exposing marsh plants in an ecosystem to elevated carbon dioxide. Each year, plant density and biomass is measured. The experiment has been running every year since.
One of the other very important things that's changing is the amount of nitrogen that's in the bay, in the Chesapeake Bay floodwater. And so we started the second experiment to number one, understand how these two factors are interacting, but also importantly, we knew that plants were growing faster at elevated CO2, but we couldn't tell where all that growth was ending up. And what we discovered in this new experiment, the cross between elevated CO2 and nitrogen, is that a lot of that extra growth was going into roots, and that it was being stored as soil organic matter.
One of the new experiments here is SmartX, the Salt Marsh Accretion Response to Temperature Experiment. It was created in 2016 and runs throughout the year, letting scientists understand marsh plant responses to temperature.
Basically, you're never going to get higher carbon dioxide in the atmosphere without also having a warmer world. So SmartX is our warmer world. We have cables that go below ground into the soil. They go 1.5 meters deep, warming up the soil. And then we also have these above ground lamps that are heating the air and the above ground vegetation. So we have both the tops of the plants, their shoots and leaves, and then we have the roots being heated as well.
Building on the work at SmartX, GenX was created as a new generation experiment designed to measure variables more frequently than could be done by hand in the past.
In 2020, we had the opportunity to write a proposal to try and figure out something more about global change and marshes. And we knew from SmartX that methane increases with warming, but we didn't know the details behind that. We wanted to know, does it increase evenly throughout the day? Does it make a difference when you have a hot day versus a cold day, if you have high tides or a lot of rain?
So these are automatic flux chambers. So the point of them is that they are open to the environment most of the time, except for once an hour when they get a signal from a machine, they close and they seal for a short period of time, for 5 to 6 minutes. And during that period of time, we measure the amount of gas accumulating or being removed from that static chamber, from that closed chamber. The idea is that, a lot of these technologies are not that complicated. You could build your own pieces and things like that. And once people realize it, then this kind of technology becomes much more accessible to people.
One of the goals of GCReW is to further engage the community to use the marsh for education. Since the beginning, there has been one major yearly volunteer-based participatory science event, the Salt Marsh Census.
We hold this large 2-week-long activity once a year at the end of July, at the beginning of August, when we come out and measure thousands and thousands of plants. We measure their height, their width.
It takes about 40 to maybe 50 employees and also volunteers. We reach out to other scientists and see if they want to be part of it.
Ends up being just a wonderful lab-wide opportunity to interact and share field experiences together.
That's where we're getting the best data set of our whole year. So we also open it up to some volunteers. You know, we get to outreach and give other people opportunities to see some of the cool science we're doing.
There are so many different jobs here, each vital to keeping GCReW running. But what can you do if you're interested in a career like this?
I think if you're interested in a scientific career, one of the really valuable things to do is see if there's some way you can get involved with a lab. So either volunteering on a project for a little bit or looking at paid summer internship opportunities. It can give you a really good idea of, is what you think of science what you would actually end up doing? Is this really fun?
I always tell people, you know, the joke is for a biologist or whatever is that, you know, they want to swim with dolphins, right? You know, but somewhere somebody is getting paid to swim with dolphins or watch monkeys or count grass or the kind of things that we do. And the way you get that is to really be on top of it and know your statistics and your math.
I would say the biggest thing is to just put some action behind what you're trying to do. Get involved, try to volunteer if you can.
Eliminate the natural tendency that we all have to be fearful. Don't ask questions about, you know, can I do this? You can. You know, is this a space for me? It is. Basically, you know, take all those doubts that you have in the back of your mind and cleanse yourself of those. Just focus on what you enjoy doing and where the opportunities are.